All right, we are here with Ken Newton, artist, entrepreneur, and man with experience in AI and machine learning. Ken, thank you for being with us. I'm really looking forward to everything you have to say about the world of art, AI, and how technology meets the world of art. Before we start, please tell us about yourself.
Awesome. Thanks. It's great to be here, Beck. So I've just been a lifelong artist ever since I could color. I've always wanted to just make drawings and paintings and whatnot. So, growing up, it was always had a pencil in my hand and went to every class I could. Always was drawing and was introduced to technology and art early in the '80s when I took a drawing in BASIC, the basic language.
Mhm.
I was drawing in BASIC, and 20 kids or so, 15 kids or so would share like three computers and one printer. So it was my first experience with technology and art together, combined computer art, and then I just grew up with technology. So in high school, I took the CAD courses, and then when I finally went to college in the early 2000s, I was all over the technology. I worked for myself as a web developer and web designer when the web boom was really taking off, and you could be an independent designer. From there, and that was my first step into being an entrepreneur and working for myself. And I was also got the opportunity to work on several machine learning projects from 2016 on through 2019, both at some small ISVs and then also at KPMG, where we worked on a risk analysis product that was machine learning backed.
That brings me directly to my main question, AI art, right? Whether it's music and whether it's videos or images. Okay. Is it theft? Is it inspiration? Or is it somewhere between the two?
It's both. I
It's
think
both. Okay, tell
I
us tell
think
us about
that
that.
we have to consider data in and data out, right?
Okay.
The data in is one issue that we have to consider for all the copyright infringements that might be going on. That's a nuance that I believe that the courts are going to have to decide over after listening to experts and really going through the ideas. I really think it is because there's such a nuance to it, right? Does it, in my mind, just because it can make a perfect copy, does that mean that everything it makes a copy? Does it everything that it comes up with? Does that mean it's a
Right.
forgery? You know, if I imagine something and tweak something into a new form, is that still a forgery?
Hmm.
Even because it was trained on copyrighted material. I don't think so, right? Like so on the data out portion, I really think it's on the creator themselves, the user themselves, to make sure they're not putting something out that's copyrighted. If it looks like Mickey Mouse, well, I guess you can do Mickey Mouse now, but if it looks like a copyrighted material, then
Hmm.
you probably shouldn't put it out there as your own.
Hmm. So really interesting on that front. I mean, blunt plagiarism aside, let's say, right? A big argument, and rightfully so, I hear from artists are things like, hey, this machine, this diffuser, has been trained on my style, my art that I've spent years developing, and now you can just prompt away my name, and here is a picture that I would have drawn, right, in my style, right? Which is a fair argument. But I'm wondering, is that any different from, let's say, an example from my world? As a guitarist, as a wannabe musician, I've had to listen to 1,000 guitarists do 1,000 different things with 1,000 different albums, and somewhere around there, I have my own thing, right? When I put my fingers on a fretboard. Maybe one day I sound like Jimmy Page, maybe one day I sound like Eric Clapton, maybe one day I sound like Eddie Van Halen, okay? But did I steal that, or did that just become my thing?
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
where
think
is the line?
they,
Like, is it any different when a human does it versus when a machine does it?
I think the biggest difference is that when I prompt something, I'm not learning anything. I'm
Mhm.
just not learning anything. I'm not making mistakes. It's not me making a mistake. It's not me doing anything, right? So I don't learn from my mistakes. I mean, I learn how to prompt better so I can get something that looks better. But, if the lighting's wrong or if maybe some anatomy is wrong, if I don't notice it because of my prior training and experience, I'm not gonna catch it. One of the things that I notice about the people who are making the claims is that they'll go in there and say, make me a Picasso,
Mhm.
right? And then, well, I mean, that's forgery. The idea is that when I am drawing, I make mistakes. When I'm painting, I make mistakes. Well, those mistakes, eventually, you make good mistakes as well as bad mistakes, and those good mistakes become your style, right?
Hmm.
That's what creates your unique vision is when you figure something out different. And you don't figure out something different just by prompting, in my opinion, right? Like you already have to have the knowledge of what's out there, art history and what's out there in the world today in order for you to quote unquote learn from what you see
Ah,
from the machine, right? Like you don't so as you know, when I'm drawing and I make a special mark, well, I can make that my mark, right? Like you don't really have that in AI. People got their styles, but you know, it's hard to say, oh, well, that's that guy's style because you know it's an AI image, right? Like it's still such a foggy area. I think that there's a lot of nuance when it comes to is it actually storing the image? You know, is it going to recreate a perfect image if I ask it to create the perfect image?
hmm.
I don't. And then what happens? You know, if, thinking philosophically or in the future is like what happens when one of these models that's never been trained on a Picasso makes a perfect Picasso, right? Like is it possible? Will it be possible? I think so, right? Like you're able to mash together all this body of knowledge and different experiences and then say I want something in this style or a cubist, you know, maybe in the future it will be possible. I don't know. I don't like to fall into the hype and I try to be a harsh critic of AI.
So on that thought, and you can push back on me here if you disagree, what you said about, okay, with art, let's say with Picasso or Monet, right? You've got your fingerprints, you've got your style on that piece of art. Okay. One of the things that I find super, super intriguing, as again, someone I can't draw, right? Maybe a stick figure. However, and this is one of the reasons why I love open source material so much, is I can, let's say, create my own style in AI, okay, take those stylized images, go ahead and train my own model, right? And now I created an AI art model in my image. And therefore, that is my signature, right?
Maybe, right? Yeah, and I would push back on it because,
Okay.
right, I mean, you didn't photo bash things together. You asked for an image, and the computer gave you an image. It's like me asking a photographer for an image or an artist. It's asking a third party for an image
Sure.
in my under, you know, and that might change in the future. I don't know. I think that if it's coming straight from the machine, I think that there's just a lot of machine in it.
Hmm.
You know, if you find a style that you like, that you're able to make your own, you know, I can see what you're saying, right? Like, but now you're talking about using synthetic data and basically, right? Like you've claimed this as a style that came from the computer, you've claimed it as your own, and you fed it in as synthetic data. Like it's not
Mhm.
an object that really existed ever.
Mhm.
Now the computer's trained on things that never really existed. I don't. Is that, you know? Is that going to lead to data corruption and weird things, or is it really going to bring a style out for you? Or I don't know. It's an interesting concept.
It's a fuzzy line.
I've always imagined putting all of my drawings in it, but I mean, when it comes to style, you can't own a style, and very
Uh-huh.
few artists ever have their own style, in my opinion. I mean, it just everyone, if they're like me, they're curious and they're always looking at new things, always
Uh-huh.
trying new things, always wanting to check out, you know, and you get tired of things, right? Like I might draw for 6 months and get just tired of drawing, so then I'll paint and then get tired of that, etc. So
I will say, going back to the whole style thing, like in the LinkedIn AI community and LinkedIn artist AI artist community, I definitely know people who I could just take a look at one of their pictures and go, "Yep, that's he or that's she,"
yep,
right?
yep.
So you definitely, in my opinion, do see fingerprints forming. It's there. Now, I want to ask you one more question about this, and I think it's an exhilarating conversation. So, okay, one of your arguments is that just because a machine came up with it, it's an algorithm that came up with it, and then I took this and let's say trained an AI model in that style. Is that really my style? Okay, let's flip that for a second. A photographer takes a picture. That picture goes through a ton of editing, Photoshop, airbrushing, so on and so forth. Okay, at that point, is that a legitimate creation of that photographer? And
Right.
how is this any different?
Yeah, you brought up Photoshop, which is, you know, you know, obviously something that we should probably talk about in this context because, you know, traditional photographers use the dark room. They made their accidents with light and chemical, and that became their style, right? Like,
Mhm.
oh, I like the way this is blurred, or I like the way this is whatever, and that becomes their style. So, Yeah, it's an interesting concept when you bring in Photoshop. I was around when Photoshop and photo, bashing was new, and it was frowned upon. You
Yeah,
weren't a
okay,
real
all
artist.
right.
If you use Photoshop, you weren't a real artist.
Well, there you go. Yeah.
You had Control Z, right? Like you can undo. You can't undo when you're painting,
Uh-huh.
So that was always the big argument. It's like, oh well, you can just undo, so it's not real art, you know.
Very
And
case in
now
point. Yeah.
today, it's sold for millions and millions of dollars. Some of it.
Mhm.
So I don't know. I think that I know from art history that it's edging on avant-garde today, and anything avant-garde usually finds its way into the mainstream, right? So I think that there is a large chance that AI, video, AI, all this stuff will become much more mainstream.
Yeah. Yeah. And then
And
we're
I
getting
mean,
there.
I mean beyond art, right? Like there's no doubt it's going to be commercial. It's going to be everywhere. We already see it everywhere on all the socials, and before it's all over with, it'll be every commercial you see. And unfortunately, I think we're going to enter the death of the internet, like they say, and it'll be a bunch of AI bots talking to AI bots, and
For what it's worth. Yeah.
yeah, but I think it's going to increase the value of human engagement. It's going to increase the value of physical human art. Um, I think that those things aren't going to go away. I would be an artist if there was nothing else to do in life. If I had UBI and I didn't have to work, I'd be an artist, right? Like I
I
would
agree
still
with you.
draw, I'd still create. So I don't think I'm special. I think other people would do it too.
So would you say then what we have right now with Gen AI is the next evolution of art?
I think it's not yet an art movement, but it is a new tool, right?
Hmm,
So yes, we're going to throw that in our toolbox. It's going to be there. How AR becomes an art movement is a much broader, there's a lot more to becoming an art movement than just being the new hot thing, right?
sure.
So I think that there's an opportunity for it, but the artists that are using AI, in my opinion, should stick to the medium meets the message. So talk about AI, use it, utilize it, talk about it, have themes around it. All most of the art that gets noticed really pushes the message in your face, right? Like what it's saying, or at least you can easily decipher what it's saying. And I think that if you want to be an artist and use AI, those paradigms still apply.
Mhm. Do you think that's how an artist can create, excuse me, maintain their unique identity is keep doing what you love, keep doing what you're good at, but also embrace this new toolbox that's available to you.
Yeah, absolutely. If you've gone from mixed media, if you ever worked in mixed media where you just get to play with everything, right? It doesn't have to be oil paint. It doesn't have to be certain types of markers. It can be all these different things. And I think that that's kind of the way AI could be. If your tool set is about imagery, or in this case video, we're talking a lot about. If you're an editor, see how well you can edit with the AI tools. Maybe there's actually AI editing tools that you could use, or possibly that's what you don't do, right? Like you just use the image generators and the video generators, and then you edit.
Mhm.
I think finding a way to put the tools to, I don't think you should use them just to use them. You should use them with an intent to figure out how they work and if they're going to be good for you.
You touched upon something really interesting though, AI, or even just internet in general. Do you think it makes people more creative, having the capability of doing what we're doing, or is it inevitably going to make people less smart? I can tell you, in my opinion and in my experience, it's actually made me more creative, whether it's, hands-on hard coding. I code now more than I ever did without this stuff,
Yep.
right? Picture generations aside, I can't draw to save my life, but now I can visualize things. Even
Yep.
with music, I can start something, let's say on the guitar, and help AI kind of fill in those holes. So it's made me more creative, but I'm interested in your opinion.
Definitely. There's no doubt about it. I had spent 15 years kind of neglecting my artistic talents. And then when AI came out, after about 6 months of investigating it and seeing it and messing with it, I kept seeing things. I was like, I can do that.
Mhm.
I can, it's so like, as I saw those things, I was like, I know I can do that. I would want to do them, right? Like I want to make it because that's the artist in me. I want it to have my marks. I want to make it. And so that just grew on me little by little. And it really sparked me to, start drawing again, start painting again. And then I balance that, or I use the inspiration from Gen AI, right? Like I'll go in there and show me a bird picture of a jeweled bird or something, right?
Right.
And it shows me all these different things, right? Like I don't have to draw what it shows me, but it fills my mind with all these different things. And music's the same way. Like
Here's some-
I don't have I just don't know music, but I can listen to it on through the AI, and I'm like, wow, this it fills my head with visions. It really inspires my creative juices to mess with it. But then the bad part about it is that I think that Gen AI in particular, the imagery, I think that that's really dopamine driven, right? Like it's real
Mm,
addictive. I saw myself, generate, 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 right? Um, I think that goes away the longer you use it and the more in depth you use it. Like when you're using the open source and you're building the tools and the workflows and all that, that kind of like instant hit isn't there, right? But when you're on Stable Diffusion and just click, 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 there's a lot of I think a lot of that reward system with dopamine versus the long drawn out accomplishment that you get out of creating something
yeah.
like art.
So we just now, in the 5 minutes or so, talked about the two sides of the coin. One of which is these, the new generation doesn't even have internet anymore. How would you ever find your friends in the mall if you didn't have a cell phone, right? But on the other side, we talked about, man, I'm getting more and more creative now, right? So there's a plus and a negative.
Right.
How do we balance the two?
Yeah, I don't. Just I think that you have to be conscious of your time, right? Like it's the only reason that I enjoy AI the way I do enjoy it now is because of my lifelong experience and my training in art,
That
right?
right there. That right there. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't if I didn't have that, I don't think I would enjoy it, and I don't think it would inspire me. But because I have all of that experience, and I can be like, oh, I want to see it in this lighting, or I want to see it specifically at this angle, right? Like these kind of things I'm able to portray and coax out of the AI. So I'm like, wow, I actually am able to see the things that are in my head, and that's it's inspiring. It's really it gets me wanting to create.
I think you touched upon it perfectly right there. You put it into words better than I could. It's because of your past training as an artist, right? The examples you gave before, color palettes, contrast, lighting. It's because you're already trained in it that you are able to get the best out of what AI has to offer, right? And that's how you build your own fingerprints. That's how you make sure you're not corrupted, basically, right? Instead of constantly spamming that generate button,
Yep.
right? And I 100% agree with you. Learn how to use this before you get to this,
Yeah.
right? And that's how you're going to get the best of all worlds.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think if you conscious of your time and force yourself to delve deeper into the fundamentals of whatever it is, like if you're using LLMs to write, learn how to be a writer, right?
Writer,
Don't make it do the writing for you, because we understand now it's an average machine. It's going to give you the average. You want to be an average writer, let ChatGPT write for you.
beautifully said.
If you want to be an average artist, let the diffusers make your pictures.
Hmm.
And that's just the way it's going to be, right? Like,
Beautifully said. Well, as we wrap up, please tell everyone, how can we get a hold of you? How can we
yeah,
get your attention?
yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, Ken Newton, and then I'm found on socials at Infotrix, and then the Artist Collective is out there, theartistcollective.io,
Hmm.
kennewton.com. Definitely reach out if you have any questions or want to collaborate. Just shoot the breeze.
You're working on a product called Frequency. Please tell us about Frequency.
So Frequency is my custom coded application that's used for audiovisual therapy and meditation. I've been building Frequency my whole career since early 2000s. I was a web developer and designer, so I know all the languages, I know all the frameworks and all that. But now, with the help of Claude and ChatGPT and the APIs, I've been coding everything vanilla, right? Like everything's myself. I'm not using any third parties. I'm not using any libraries, and it feels good, right? Like it really feels like mine, and I know the code inside and out, even though the LLM's been helping me. So, and I'm using
Wonderful.
Suno, right, for the music. Hopefully, I can get some musicians in on it, but having Suno and Udio to do the music has just been it's been freeing, right? Like I wouldn't have been able to do it without it. So.
I will make sure all your links are either on comments or on the description. Ken, thank you so much.
Yeah.
Fantastic conversation. Um,
Wonderful.
Fantastic conversation. I'm sure it's one that people are going to look at and really make them think. I really, really appreciate your time.
Excellent. Thank you so much.